In 1933, on the eastern border between modern-day Syria and Iraq, the vast ruins of an ancient city were discovered. The site was called Mari, and it would have been just another archaeological site to add to a long list of ancient cities discovered throughout Syria and Iraq during that time, had it not been for a vast archive of more than 25,000 cuneiform tablets that were found buried at the site. As the inhabitants of Mari wrote in the same cuneiform writing system that had already been previously deciphered, the tablets could be translated, and they soon provided a fascinating and important insight into life and society within an ancient and long-forgotten Mesopotamian city, which had once been one of the largest and most important in the world. In particular, the tablets provided substantial insight into the life of one of the kings of Mari. He ruled between 1775 and 1761 BC, close to 4,000 years before. That king was Zimri Lim, and amongst a tirade of faceless, almighty rulers, he is arguably one of the first documented leaders in history to have a real personality. Mari had been founded in around 2900 BC. It was situated in an economically powerful position on the Euphrates River, directly between the long-established ancient powerhouses of the Sumerian city-states to the southeast, and the newly forming states and trading hubs along the Mediterranean and in Asia Minor to the northwest. Like most contemporary city-states, Mari suffered defeat several times during its long history, and it was razed and rebuilt on several occasions, finally becoming independent after the decline and the collapse of the Akkadian Empire by around 2100 BC. Despite Mari's cultural affinity with Sumeria in the lowlands of southern Iraq, where the first cities in the world had been built thousands of years even before Zimri Lim's reign, they were actually a Semitic people who spoke an entirely separate language to Sumerian. They worshipped both Semitic and Sumerian gods, and are a testament to the gradual knock-on effect that those first Sumerian cities had upon the surrounding peoples to them, and the gradual outward spread of city building and civilization from southern Iraq from around 4000 BC. Zimri Lim didn't have an easy reign by any means. He was forced to flee to a foreign city early in his life, after his father was assassinated during a palace coup. Shortly afterwards, Shamshi-Adad I, the king of Assur, a rival power from northern Iraq, which would eventually form the basis of the Assyrian Empire, occupied the city, put his own son upon the throne. Finally, after Shamshi-Adad's death, Zimri Lim was able to return from exile to oust the Assyrian king's son, with the help of allies he had built up over the years. He then ruled over the city for around 13 years, and expanded his realm to arguably its greatest territorial extent during that time. The royal palace was also expanded significantly, until it was said to be the envy of every other king in the region. Zimri Lim was active on an international level. For a time he allied himself with Hammurabi, king of Babylon, in his wars against Elam and the other foreign powers of the region. They kept extensive diplomatic contacts, and Zimri Lim provided troops to his campaigns. He also campaigned extensively to establish and consolidate his power in the neighbouring territories along the Euphrates. Substantial correspondences between the king and his daughters suggest that he thought very highly of women and considered them capable of making important decisions, which is unique for this time period. Possibly the most famous event of his life occurred around midway through his reign, when he made a grand journey from his capital all the way to the Mediterranean coast. This was no mean feat for the time, being a round trip of more than 1,000 miles, through mostly foreign territory, which most of his people, himself likely included, would never have seen before. He didn't exactly travel lightly either, bringing with him his family, his court officials, his army, his cooks, and a huge array of musicians and citizens, around 4,000 people in total, pushed into action apparently upon a whim. The visit was part diplomatic journey and part PR spectacle, and on the way he met with many kings and rulers of foreign cities, establishing new and re-establishing old links. His final destination was the city of Ugarit on the Mediterranean coast, where he stayed for a while until he returned home. The tour took 5 months to complete, and was likely the first time the king and the majority of his people saw the sea and many of the lands that they travelled through. After Hammurabi's defeat of Elam over the next few years, he eventually turned on his former ally, in 1762 sacking and conquering the city of Mari. Despite the previous alliance, Zimri Lim disappears from the record at this point, and is thought to have been killed. The city became a regional centre under the Babylonians, before gradually declining in influence over the years. By the time of the Greeks, 1,000 years later, the city had been abandoned and all but lost to history, until it was discovered again in the 20th century.